The sky over Calyx 9 was a storm of fire and smoke. Explosions shook the ground as human and Zinari forces clashed in a brutal battle that had raged for weeks. Lieutenant Ryland Drake crouched behind a shattered wall, his pulse hammering in his chest. His uniform was scorched, and dust clung to his sweat-slick skin. He had seen too many friends fall, and yet the fight continued. Every human soldier knew that losing this battle could mean losing the entire frontier. Ryland scanned the battlefield, his eyes trained on the wreckage of a Zinari hovercraft that had been struck by human artillery. Twisted metal jutted into the sky, and smoke billowed from the wreckage. Something inside the wreckage moved. He focused, squinting against the smoke and fire. It was small. Too small to be a soldier, a child. The thought hit him sharply. A Zinari child, trapped under the debris. The humans were focused on killing enemy soldiers, and yet here was an innocent life, a tiny heartbeat struggling beneath the wreckage. Ryland's hands clenched his rifle tightly. His commanding officer would call this foolish. Saving an enemy child was against orders. It could get him court-martialed, or worse. But Ryland's gut told him what he already knew. She's a child, he whispered to himself. She's not the enemy. Without waiting, he sprinted across the cratered battlefield. Bullets tore past him, exploding in clouds of dust and rock around his feet. Zinari soldiers were retreating, regrouping, or perhaps moving to recover their own. It didn't matter. Ryland's focus was only on the small shape beneath the wreckage. He dropped to his knees and began pulling metal away. The child's small hands reached out weakly, and her face half covered in soot and blood, looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. She had strange silver eyes and skin that shimmered faintly in the smoke, a feature unique to her species. Ryland lifted the debris as best he could, feeling the jagged edges cut into his hands. Pain did not matter. Nothing mattered but getting her out. Finally, he freed her. The child coughed, tiny shudders racking her frame. She clung to him instinctively, burying her face into his chest. Ryland whispered calming words, half in his own language, half in the Zinari tongue he had studied in basic training. The child seemed to understand, her body relaxing slightly. Ryland scanned the battlefield again. A human squad was moving toward him, and Zinari reinforcements were arriving. He had to move. With the child in his arms, he ran through the craters and ruined buildings, using walls and wreckage for cover. He dodged laser fire, ducked under falling debris, and pushed past wounded soldiers. A human soldier called out, "Lieutenant, what the hell are you doing?" Ryland didn't answer. Words would only slow him down. The child was the only priority. He finally reached a small trench that offered relative safety. Gasping for breath, he gently laid the child down and examined her. She had a shallow wound on her arm and a small cut on her forehead. He ripped a strip from his uniform to bandage her, doing his best to clean the soot and blood from her face. She watched him quietly, her fear slowly giving way to trust. "Name?" Ryland asked softly. The child whispered. "Lyra." Ryland nodded. "I'm Ryland. We're going to be okay now." He looked around. The battlefield was still chaotic, but for a moment, he allowed himself to hope. Saving Lyra had been risky, but it was the right thing to do. Even in the midst of war, humanity had to shine through, and he knew that acts of kindness mattered as much as acts of courage. Night fell, and the sky turned dark with smoke and stars peeking through the haze. Ryland carried Lyra to the human command post, alerting medics to her presence. The soldiers there were stunned. They had expected prisoners, wounded soldiers, maybe spies, but a child, one of the enemy. His commanding officer, Major Kellen, approached, his face a mask of disbelief and irritation. "Drake, why is there a Zinari child here? What have you done?" Ryland stood tall, holding Lyra close. "I saved her, sir. She's a child. She doesn't belong in the war. She doesn't belong in the war." Kellen frowned, his jaw tightening. "Drake, this is dangerous. She could be a spy. She could have explosives. You've broken protocol. Ryland met his gaze steadily. She's alive. That's what matters. I did what I had to do. For a long moment, Kellen said nothing. Finally, he shook his head. You'll be disciplined for this. But I can't argue with the results. She's alive. Thanks to you. The medics took Lyra to a secure area, and Ryland stayed by her side until she was stable. She clutched a small piece of metal, a broken toy perhaps, and whispered, "Thank you." Ryland smiled faintly. "You're welcome, Lyra. You're safe now." The next days were strange. The war raged on outside the walls of the command post. But inside, a small spark of peace existed. Ryland spent time with Lyra, teaching her human words, helping her eat, and keeping her spirits up. She was curious about everything: human tools, the strange vehicles, even the stories of other planets. Her intelligence and courage impressed him, and he found himself laughing again, a sound he had not heard in weeks. Ryland also saw the effect Lyra had on others. Soldiers who had grown numb to the violence now paused to help her, to offer her food or toys. They treated her with a respect they reserved for their own children. Even the gruffest veterans softened in her presence. It was as if the humanity he had feared was lost in the war was being restored by one small, silver-eyed child. But not everyone was pleased. News of a human saving a Zinari child spread quickly, reaching ears across the battlefield. Some humans accused him of weakness, of betrayal. Some Zinari saw it as an opportunity, perhaps a bargaining chip. Ryland ignored the whispers, focused only on Lyra's safety. Late one night, as the camp slept, Ryland found himself sitting beside Lyra. She was staring at the stars through a broken panel of the command post. "Why did you save me?" she asked, her small voice barely above a whisper. Ryland hesitated. "Because it's the right thing to do. Even in war, we have to choose what's right." Lyra thought for a moment. "Humans, you are different." Ryland smiled faintly. "Different can be good," he said. "We just have to remember it." The bond between them grew quickly. Lyra began to trust him completely, speaking words in both languages, sharing thoughts and fears. She reminded him of what was at stake: not territory, not weapons, not strategy, but lives. Human lives, Zinari lives, and the possibility that they could coexist someday. Yet, even as hope grew, Ryland knew the danger was far from over. Saving Lyra had made him a target. Extremists on both sides saw him as a threat. Human soldiers who were hardened by war saw him as soft. Zinari forces could come looking for the child at any moment. But he would face whatever came next. For now, though, in the quiet moments, he let himself believe that one life mattered. That one small act of courage, saving a child in the middle of a battlefield, could make a difference. And as he watched Lyra sleep safely for the first time in her young life, Ryland felt a fierce, human pride. Not for victory in battle, not for medals or glory, but for choosing compassion in a world that had almost forgotten it. Outside, the war continued. Explosions shook the horizon, and the screams of battle echoed faintly across the planet. But inside the walls of the command post, a human soldier and an enemy child shared a quiet, fragile peace. And in that peace, Ryland saw a glimpse of what humanity could be. Not perfect, not invincible, but capable of incredible courage, empathy, and love. And in that glimpse, he found a reason to keep fighting, not just for victory, but for something far greater. The future of lives worth saving, no matter what side of the battlefield they were on. Months passed since the day Ryland had rescued Lyra from the battlefield. The war on Calyx 9 continued, though both sides had begun to tire of endless fighting. In a small human settlement far from the front lines, Lyra thrived under careful watch. She learned quickly, picking up human language and customs with surprising ease. Her silver eyes, always curious, took in everything around her. The way humans walked, the sounds they made, the tools they used. Even their laughter, Ryland had grown attached to her, though he tried not to show it too openly. She was, after all, the child of the enemy. And yet, when she smiled at him, trusting him completely, he could not deny the bond that had formed. Lyra had taught him something he had almost forgotten amid the chaos of war. That innocence, bravery, and trust could still exist even in a world of destruction. One quiet evening, as Ryland sat repairing a small hover drone, Lyra approached him, holding a folded piece of paper she had found in the medbay. "What is it?" Ryland asked. "I drew it," she said softly. Unfolding it, she revealed a sketch of the battlefield, where he had saved her the ruined hovercraft, the smoke, and a small figure in the wreckage. "You saved me here," she whispered. "But what about my mother?" Ryland's hands froze. He had avoided thinking about her mother, Sarin, for months. He had heard rumors of her surviving the battle, but the thought of meeting her filled him with unease. Sarin was the leader of a Zinari squad that had become famous for her intelligence, strength, and dedication to her people. She was the kind of person who inspired loyalty and fear at the same time. And now, she might come looking for Lyra. "We'll think about that later," Ryland said gently, though his voice lacked conviction. Lyra tilted her head, sensing his hesitation. "She's alive, Lyra. That's what matters. For now, you're safe." But safety was fragile. It wasn't long before a message arrived through diplomatic channels. A Zinari envoy requested a meeting. The message was formal, precise, and unmistakable. "Sarin, the mother of Lyra, wishes to speak with Lieutenant Ryland Drake." The camp erupted in whispers. Soldiers looked at Ryland with a mix of curiosity, admiration, and suspicion. Some warned him that meeting Sarin could be dangerous. Others said it might be an opportunity to build peace between the two species. Ryland prepared carefully. He knew the encounter could change everything. He dressed in clean uniform, checked his weapon discreetly, and made sure Lyra was comfortable and safe under the watch of medics. The journey to the neutral meeting zone was tense, with armed escorts on both sides. When he arrived, Sarin was waiting. She was taller than he had imagined, with silver-gray skin that shimmered faintly, sharp eyes that seemed to see everything, and a presence that commanded respect. She looked at Ryland carefully, her expression unreadable. "You are Ryland Drake," she said, her voice clear and steady. "The one who saved my daughter." Ryland bowed slightly. "Yes, ma'am. I did what I could to protect her. She's a child." Sarin studied him. "A child," she repeated, almost thoughtfully. "And yet you risked your life in the middle of a battle to save her. That is unusual for a human soldier." Ryland met her gaze. "I couldn't leave her to die, no matter what side she was on." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Sarin seemed to weigh every word, every gesture. Then she nodded slightly. "Your courage is noted, and your compassion. But you must understand, bringing her here changes everything. Lyra is not just my daughter. She is part of our people, and her safety is essential to our mission." Ryland nodded, understanding the implication. She wasn't just here as a mother. Sarin represented the hopes and fears of an entire species. Returning Lyra to her care would require careful planning, and the journey would be dangerous. "I understand," he said quietly. "I want what's best for her. I want her to be safe." Sarin's expression softened just a little. "Then you will help me. We will escort Lyra back to Zinari territory safely, and you will be the one to lead the way. You know the dangers better than anyone." Ryland hesitated. Escorting a child across enemy lines? The thought made his stomach twist. They would face human extremists who might not understand, Zinari forces who might mistrust him, and the constant threat of battle. But when he looked at Lyra's trusting face, the decision became clear. He could not let fear stop him. "I will do it," he said finally. "I will get her to you safely." Preparations began immediately. Ryland and a small human escort team were assigned to the mission. Lyra packed a few essentials, including her drawings, a small keepsake from the human camp, and a carefully folded blanket that she clutched like a talisman. The journey was slow and tense. They traveled through ruined landscapes, avoiding known battle zones, and using stealth to bypass both human and Zinari patrols. Each night, Ryland kept watch, his rifle at the ready, and Lyra slept beside him in the small transport shuttle, trusting him completely. During the journey, Lyra asked countless questions. "Why do humans fight?" she asked one night. Watching the stars through the shuttle window, Ryland thought carefully. Because sometimes people forget to talk. Sometimes they fight because they are scared, or because they want something they think they need. But that doesn't mean everyone is bad. There are people who fight for what's right. And there are people who try to protect others, even when it's hard. Lyra nodded slowly. "Like you?" Ryland smiled faintly. "Like me." As the days passed, Ryland saw the child's resilience. She adapted quickly to the harsh conditions, learned to recognize danger, and even offered suggestions during tricky maneuvers. She had a sharp mind, even sharper than many soldiers he knew. And yet, she remained innocent, reminding him every day why he had saved her. The first real danger came as they approached a ruined space station orbiting a neutral planet. Extremists from both sides had learned of Lyra's presence, and they were determined to claim her. Ryland's shuttle detected multiple incoming ships, all armed and hostile. "Brace yourselves," he said quietly. Lyra clutched his arm, and he held her close. "Stay calm. We'll get through this." The shuttle ducked and weaved through the station's debris field, lasers streaking past. Ryland's mind raced, calculating every move. He used the terrain, the shadows, and the shuttle's limited weapons to stay ahead. The human escort team worked seamlessly, a testament to training and discipline. Finally, after hours of tense maneuvering, they emerged unscathed. Lyra's small hands were sweaty, but her eyes sparkled with relief. "You did it," she whispered. Ryland nodded, feeling a surge of pride. "We did it together." As they landed on the neutral planet, a Zinari escort was waiting. Sarin was among them. When Lyra saw her mother, she ran, throwing herself into Sarin's arms. The reunion was emotional, a mix of relief, joy, and gratitude. Ryland stepped back, giving them space, but he watched carefully, seeing the bond re-establish itself instantly. Sarin looked at him then, her expression unreadable but her eyes shining. "You kept her safe," she said. "I owe you more than words can say." Ryland shook his head. "I did what anyone with a heart would do. She's your daughter. I just helped her find her way back." Sarin nodded slowly. "And yet, your heart, it is human. That is why she is alive. That is why you are alive. You have reminded me why we must look for understanding, even in war." The journey back to Zinari territory was calm in comparison. Ryland rode alongside Sarin's escort, learning more about her people, their values, and their hopes for the future. He began to understand that saving Lyra was not just an act of mercy, it was a chance to bridge two species torn by war. By the time they reached Zinari lands, Ryland felt a sense of purpose he had not known before. He realized that his humanity, his ability to act morally and courageously, was what truly made him strong. It was not weapons, numbers, or strategy alone. It was compassion, intelligence, and courage. Lyra was safely returned to her home. Sarin thanked Ryland again, and a bond of trust began to form between them. Though Ryland knew his duty with the human forces was not yet finished, he felt a sense of pride and hope. One act of courage, one choice to save a child, had changed the lives of many and perhaps, in time, the course of the war itself. And as he left Zinari lands and returned to his post, Ryland knew that the war would continue. Battles would rage, and danger would never truly end. But he also knew that humanity, its empathy, its courage, its morality was a force that could endure, even in the darkest times. And somewhere, in a safe home far from the battlefield, Lyra slept peacefully, dreaming of a future where humans and Zinari could live side by side, a future that had begun because one human had chosen to save one child. The journey to Zinari territory was supposed to be simple. With Lyra safe in Sarin's care, Ryland had expected the rest to be straightforward, but as they prepared to travel across hostile space, he realized that peace was fragile and that danger lurked in every shadow. The neutral planet where Lyra had been returned to her mother was a crossroads of human and Zinari activity. Extremists from both sides operated in secret, willing to strike anyone they considered a threat. Ryland was assigned to escort Lyra back to her home planet, alongside a small human team and a Zinari squad under Sarin's command. They traveled in a lightly armed transport ship, designed for speed rather than combat. Lyra, now more confident and curious, sat quietly in a corner, holding a small book she had found. She glanced at Ryland every so often, a small smile on her face. He returned the look with a reassuring nod, trying to keep her calm. The first few hours of the journey were peaceful. Stars stretched across the void like silver threads, and the hum of the transport's engines was soothing. Ryland spent the time checking the ship's systems, ensuring the shields were at full strength and that weapons were ready if needed. He knew the real danger would come when they passed through contested space, where human and Zinari patrols were more aggressive. Lyra approached him quietly. "Will there be monsters out there?" she asked, her voice small. Ryland chuckled softly. "Not monsters, Lyra. Just people who make bad choices. But we'll be careful. You don't need to worry." She nodded, though he could see the worry still in her eyes. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm here. I'll keep you safe." Hours later, the first warning signals appeared. A small fleet of ships had been detected ahead, moving fast and armed. Ryland's heart tightened. These were not random patrols, they were likely extremists, human or Zinari, who did not trust either side. He signaled the crew to take evasive action. The transport ship ducked and weaved through asteroid fields, dodging lasers that streaked across space. Ryland's hands moved over the controls with precision, guiding the ship with the experience of countless battles. Beside him, Lyra clutched the armrest, wide-eyed but silent. Ryland glanced at her. "You're doing well," he said softly. "Just a little longer." The first ambush lasted hours. They fought off several attacks, the transport's weapons barely enough to hold off the smaller enemy ships. Ryland's training, quick thinking, and calm under pressure made the difference. Every move was calculated, every choice precise. The enemy forces eventually disengaged, perhaps realizing that their target was too well defended. When the fight ended, Ryland leaned back, exhausted. Lyra looked up at him. "You were amazing," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "We survived. That's what matters." Despite the danger, the journey continued. Ryland found himself thinking more about Lyra and her mother. Sarin had been cautious but respectful toward him, a balance of wariness and trust that he had come to appreciate. She was a leader of her people, strong and intelligent, yet she was also a mother who wanted only the best for her child. That human emotion, care for someone innocent, was something Ryland deeply understood. Over the next few days, they navigated treacherous routes, avoiding both known patrols and hidden ambushes. Lyra proved to be observant, noticing small details about the ship and the crew's movements. Her intelligence impressed Ryland. She was learning not only about humans but about strategy, caution, and survival. Her curiosity, tempered with caution, reminded him of the potential for understanding between their species. One evening, as they rested in the ship's small lounge, Lyra asked, "Why are humans and Zinari fighting?" Ryland thought carefully. "It's complicated. People fight for power, for fear, for what they think is right. Sometimes, they don't stop to think about the cost. But it's not everyone. There are humans and Zinari who want peace, who want to protect others, just like we do." She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "I think you are one of them." Ryland smiled faintly, touched by her faith. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just trying to do what's right." The journey became more dangerous as they approached a sector controlled by extremist human forces. Intelligence suggested that these extremists had captured a small Zinari group recently and were looking for anyone connected to Lyra or Sarin. Ryland's nerves tightened. One wrong move could trigger a full-scale attack. And with a child on board, the stakes were higher than ever. As they entered the sector, sensors picked up multiple fast-moving ships. Ryland activated the ship's defensive shields and weapons. "Everyone, stay sharp," he said. "We're entering hostile territory." The ambush began suddenly. Laser fire ripped through space, the ship shuddering with every impact. Ryland maneuvered with skill, dodging attacks and returning fire. The human escort team worked seamlessly, covering weak points and providing strategic support. Lyra, despite her fear, remained calm, trusting Ryland completely. Hours passed in tense combat. Ryland's mind was sharp, calculating every move, predicting enemy patterns. He realized that brute force alone would not win this battle. They needed strategy, patience, and teamwork. With careful coordination, they lured the extremists into a trap, using asteroids and debris fields to limit the enemy's advantage. One by one, the hostile ships were forced to retreat or were destroyed. When the battle ended, Ryland allowed himself a moment to breathe. Lyra looked at him with awe. "You saved us again," she said. He shook his head. "We saved each other. That's how it works." As they continued, Sarin joined Ryland in the cockpit. She studied the star maps with keen eyes. "You have skill, human," she said. "And courage. Lyra is lucky to have you guiding her." Ryland nodded. "I just want her to be safe. That's all that matters." Sarin's expression softened. "Then we will ensure that she is. Together, we can navigate these dangers. You have my respect, Ryland Drake." The words filled him with quiet pride. Respect from an enemy, earned through courage and compassion, was more valuable than any medal or praise from his own side. Over the next few days, the journey became calmer, though still tense. Ryland and Lyra spent time together whenever possible. She asked questions about human life, their customs, and even their ships. He answered patiently, sometimes with humor, sometimes with serious reflection. Their bond grew stronger, built on trust, respect, and the shared experience of survival. Finally, after weeks of careful travel, they approached the outskirts of Zinari territory. The familiar silver landscapes stretched below them, a reminder that the war was not just about conflict but about home, family, and identity. Ryland felt a sense of relief and accomplishment. They had survived ambushes, navigated hostile space, and protected Lyra through danger after danger. When the transport touched down on Zinari soil, a crowd of Zinari awaited them. Sarin led her people forward, welcoming Lyra with open arms. The reunion was emotional, filled with tears, relief, and gratitude. Lyra hugged her mother tightly, and Sarin turned to Ryland with a mixture of admiration and thanks. "You did more than I could have asked," she said. "You have proven that humans are capable of honor and courage. My daughter is safe because of you." Ryland shook his head. "I only did what anyone would do. She's your daughter. She deserved a chance." Sarin studied him for a moment, her eyes searching for something deeper. "No," she said softly. "You did more than that. You reminded me of what it means to care, to protect, to act with humanity. That is why she is alive. That is why you are alive." Ryland felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been dangerous, exhausting, and filled with uncertainty, but it had also proven that humanity, its courage, intelligence, and compassion, could shine even in the darkest times. Saving a child had not only preserved a life but had forged a bridge between two species, a chance for understanding and peace. Lyra stayed with her mother, but she often looked back at Ryland with a smile, knowing he had been her protector, her guide, and her friend. He watched her go, feeling pride, hope, and a quiet joy. As Ryland prepared to return to human-controlled space, he realized that the journey had changed him. He had faced enemies, ambushes, and the uncertainty of war. He had protected a child, earned the respect of an enemy leader, and seen the power of compassion in action. Humanity's strength was not only in weapons or technology, but in its ability to act with courage, intelligence, and moral clarity. And somewhere deep in space, a child slept peacefully, dreaming of a future where humans and Zinari could coexist, a future that had begun because one human had chosen to save one child. Ryland Drake stood on the observation deck of the Zinari spaceport, watching as the sun rose over the silver plains of Lyra's homeworld. The light reflected off the crystal-like buildings, making them shimmer like stars scattered across the ground. It was a peaceful morning, the kind that seemed impossible after months of war, ambushes, and danger. And yet, for the first time in a long while, Ryland allowed himself to breathe deeply, feeling the weight of tension lift from his shoulders. Lyra ran across the plaza, her silver eyes bright with joy. She carried a small bouquet of luminous flowers, one she had picked from the fields near her home. She ran straight to her mother, serene, and hugged her tightly. Ryland watched the reunion, the way mother and daughter moved together, their bond renewed and unbroken. He felt a surge of pride and relief. His mission had succeeded, and more importantly, Lyra was truly safe. Sarin turned to Ryland, her face a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. "You stayed with her through everything," she said softly. "Through danger, through uncertainty. I cannot thank you enough." Ryland shook his head, feeling uncomfortable with praise. "I did what anyone should have done. A child's life matters, no matter which side she was on." Sarin's eyes softened. "And yet, your courage, your compassion, your humanity, it has changed the way we see humans. Lyra is alive because of you, and maybe, in some small way, this will change the future of our peoples." Ryland's gaze shifted to the horizon, thinking of the long months that had led to this moment. The battles, the ambushes, the endless calculations to keep the transport ship and its passengers safe. All of it had been worth it. And yet, he felt a sense of responsibility heavier than any battle scar. The war was not over. Tensions remained high, and extremists on both sides still sought conflict. But for now, at least, there was hope, a fragile, shining hope that humanity could be a force for good. Lyra ran up to him, placing her small hands in his. "Will you stay?" she asked. Her eyes, full of innocence and trust, looked up at him with hope. Ryland knelt down to her level. "I have duties with my people," he said gently. "But I promise you this. I will do everything I can to make sure you are safe. I will watch over you, even from afar." She nodded, satisfied with his words. Then she turned to her mother, who scooped her up and held her close. Ryland watched them, a mixture of emotions stirring inside him, pride, relief, and a quiet happiness that he had almost forgotten in the chaos of war. Sarin guided Ryland through the city to her home. The architecture was unlike anything he had seen: tall spires of translucent metal, delicate bridges connecting floating platforms, and gardens that shimmered with bioluminescent plants. The Zinari home was a place of serenity, filled with light, knowledge, and culture. Ryland realized that he had never fully understood the richness of the species he had fought against, the depth of their humanity, their capacity for beauty and love. Over the next several days, Ryland stayed with Sarin and Lyra. Not as a soldier, but as a guest. He learned about Zinari traditions, their history, and their hopes for the future. Sarin was careful, but she trusted him, and in turn, he respected their customs and their people. It was a delicate balance, one that required patience, understanding, and humility. One evening, as they sat overlooking the silver plains, Lyra asked, "Will humans and Zinari ever stop fighting?" Ryland considered the question carefully. "I hope so," he said. "It won't be easy. There are people who want war, people who want to fight. But I believe there are more who want peace, more who want to protect life, rather than destroy it. And maybe, little by little, we can show that working together is stronger than fighting. Sarin nodded, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. Your actions, Ryland, have already begun that work. Saving Lyra was more than an act of kindness, it was a message. Humanity can be a force for good, for understanding. We must hold on to that. The following weeks were filled with quiet work. Ryland helped coordinate humanitarian efforts, transporting supplies to areas still affected by the war. He worked with both human and Zinari leaders, using his experience to build bridges, prevent misunderstandings, and ensure the safety of civilians. His role was not glamorous, but it was meaningful. Every child protected, every family reunited, every act of understanding was a step toward a better future. Lyra, too, was growing stronger. She spent her days learning about both her cultures, practicing language, and understanding the histories of humans and Zinari alike. Her intelligence, curiosity, and resilience impressed Ryland every day. She had survived battles, ambushes, and fear, yet her spirit remained unbroken. She was a symbol of what could be achieved when courage and humanity prevailed. One day, a small delegation of humans arrived at the Zinari homeworld. They had heard of Ryland's actions and of the safe return of Lyra, and they came to witness the outcome. There was tension at first. Centuries of conflict do not fade overnight, but Ryland's calm presence and the evident bond between him, Lyra, and Sarin helped ease the concerns. The humans saw firsthand that compassion could coexist with strength, that saving a child could forge new paths for understanding. During the meeting, Ryland spoke carefully. We have seen what happens when fear and hatred guide our actions. We have also seen what happens when courage, intelligence, and compassion lead us. Lyra's life was at risk, but together, we protected her. Let this be the start of something greater. Let us show that humanity and Zinari can work together, even in the face of conflict. There was a moment of silence, then nods of agreement. The message was clear. One act of morality, one choice to save a life, had ripple effects far beyond the battlefield. As the sun set over the city, Ryland walked with Sarin and Lyra through the gardens. The air was filled with soft light, the scent of alien flowers, and the quiet hum of peace. Lyra ran ahead, laughing, her voice carrying on the gentle breeze. Sarin watched her with pride, then turned to Ryland. You have done more than I could have asked, she said softly. You have reminded us all that even in war, there is a place for humanity, courage, and morality. Lyra is alive because of you, and our peoples may one day see the value in what you have done. Ryland shook his head, feeling humble. I only did what I thought was right. If more people made choices like that, maybe the war wouldn't seem so endless. Sarin smiled. Then perhaps this is just the beginning. A single act can start a ripple, and ripples can become waves. Lyra ran back, clutching a small stone she had found near the gardens. She handed it to Ryland. For you, she said. So you remember me. Ryland took it, feeling the weight of its meaning. It was small, yet it carried a lifetime of trust, gratitude, and hope. I will remember, he said. Always. In the days that followed, Ryland prepared to return to human-controlled territory. He had duties to fulfill, missions to continue, and a war still raging in the distance. But he felt a new sense of purpose, a knowledge that the choices he made could influence more than just his own survival. As he boarded the transport ship one last time, Lyra ran up to him. Will you come back? She asked, her voice hopeful. Ryland knelt and smiled. I will. And I will continue to do everything I can to make sure you are safe and happy. Sarin stood beside her daughter, placing a hand on Ryland's shoulder. Go with our respect and gratitude. And remember, the future is what we make it. Together. Ryland nodded. As the ship lifted off, he looked back at the planet below. The silver plains stretched endlessly, glowing in the light of the sun. He thought of Lyra, of her mother, and of the people whose lives had been touched by one choice. A choice to act with courage and humanity. The war would continue. Battles would rage, and danger would always exist. But Ryland knew that humanity's strength lay not in weapons or numbers, but in its ability to act morally, to protect the innocent, and to make choices that inspire hope. That was a force more powerful than any army, more enduring than any technology. And somewhere on a distant world, a child slept peacefully, dreaming of a future where humans and Zinari could coexist. A future shaped by courage, compassion, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest times, humanity could shine as a beacon of hope. Ryland Drake looked forward to the challenges ahead, confident that no matter what battles awaited, the lessons he had learned would guide him. Courage, empathy, and intelligence were not just traits of a soldier, they were the essence of humanity itself. And humanity, he realized, could change the galaxy, one life at a time. As the transport ships soared through the stars, Ryland allowed himself a quiet smile. The journey had begun with saving a single child, and in saving her, he had discovered the greatest truth of all. That even in war, human courage and compassion could make the impossible possible. And somewhere in the galaxy, hope was growing, quietly, steadily, unstoppable in its reach, reminding everyone that humanity at its best was a force worth celebrating.